Welcome back, you sons of pitches. It's a landmark episode. It's episode 10, and to commemorate, we do have a special guest, our first special guest on the podcast. His name is Isaac. As you can see, he's a Liverpool fan, so we do have a great game to be talking about. Before we get into it, Isaac, why don't you tell us how you got into Liverpool, how you got into soccer? Tell us the story.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be the first special guest.
Yeah.
Of course.
But yeah, basically my dad works with somebody who's from Ireland, and her husband is from Norwich, but he grew up around Liverpool, and so he grew up like going to the games and stuff. And we went on like a family vacation, like my family and their family, and he just gave me like a Liverpool training kit, I think it was. And I was just some American 12-year-old, like I wasn't into soccer, so I was like, oh, like maybe I'll check it out, and watched a few games, got hooked. It's been great ever since.
Oh yeah, dude. That's fucking dope. That's really cool. Love the international experience. That's always cool. So speaking of the Premier League and in England, we got a couple good games. The weekend was occupied by the FA Cup, but earlier this week, while we're getting this podcast a little bit later than usual, is when we had our next round of fixtures, which we had a couple of good ones. One of the first ones, Arsenal squeaked a 2-1 victory over Nottingham Forest. Gabi Jesus directly involved with both of those goals. Anybody have any exciting thoughts about this game? I think Arsenal is slowing down a bit.
We all talked at the same time.
Yeah. I was going to say, I kind of think they're starting to ramp up a little bit. It's all, they came off 3 losses in a row. I know Gabi Jesus has been on the score sheet providing assists, but I think it's actually a really welcoming sign for Arsenal to see Jesus on the score sheet for the first time in 2024. And the other goal scorer as well, Bukayo Saka, grabbed his first goal of 2024. He was starting to be labeled overrated, especially by myself, but their stars pulled out of the fire. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep their goal scoring form going into the next game, because it's going to be a big one. But no, it was cool, and I thought it was nice to see Taiwo Awoniyi come back too for Forest. He was on fire to start the season, then he got hurt, immediately back in the side and on the score sheet as well. They obviously didn't get a result. Espiritu Santo already looks to have lost the magic he instilled in this Forest side with his appointment. And I think they might find themselves in a relegation scrap if they don't turn it around soon. So that was my takeaway from the game. I don't know what you guys thought.
Yeah, for me with Arsenal, it looks a lot of the same like that they've been the last few games. The only difference is now they're scoring.
Right.
So it's I don't think they've really changed how much they've been playing. Like, they've just been a bit more clinical and had luck go a little bit more their way. But yeah, probably could be improved in terms of play the way they play and stuff like that. But hey, at least they're scoring for their sake. So I'm probably keeping the title race interesting, but not sure how much they're really going to push.
I think the fact that they only play that way is going to be their downfall this season. Mm-hmm. Because we've come to notice now over the last few weeks, if they can't score, they're going to struggle. And they don't really have another way of playing besides these intricate quick passes and moving it side to side around the box and then trying to whip a hopeful cross into the box and really nothing coming of it. And to be honest with you, I really think they got lucky in this game. Like, Matt Turner really shouldn't get beat at his near post like that, and that really changed the game. I thought Forrest, they really didn't offer much in the game, but I certainly didn't think they played poor by any means. I think they definitely offered a good account of themselves, and they probably could have come away with a point if it wasn't for that fact that Matt Turner kind of lets them down a little bit, and I think he's let them down a few times this season. So who knows what's going to go on there. I know they've changed back and forth between him and Vlachodimos a few times now, so I don't know. I think if I'm a U.S. men's national team fan, I'm not too happy with Matt Turner's performance this game or the last couple weeks.
I'd agree with that. Being a diehard Revs fan and going like I went to a bunch of those games where Matt Turner had that breakout season. It hurts
Yeah.
when he concedes a goal. He feels like your son a little bit. But I agree. I think the lights have shown a little bit too bright for him recently, and he's just kind of conceded goals and given away chances that he really shouldn't be giving away. But I do think, speaking about Arsenal, I think it was a game that like both these players have gotten a lot of scrutiny and they both scored. I think that says something about them. But I do think, like Angelo said, Saka was starting to get labeled as like missing. As a Liverpool fan, I still think he is missing. Like scoring against the 16th seed Nottingham Forest is great, but it's like you won 2-1. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not like it was an unexpected result. You know,
right. It's like, oh, you beat a team that you should beat every week. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it was nice for him to show up. It was a great finish, but I do think like this is gonna sound biased wearing this shirt, but like if he didn't, here's my whole opinion. If he doesn't miss that penalty in the Euros, and like you have this like feeling like, oh, we should feel bad for him because he was put in that situation, which you absolutely should. Like, there's no way he should have been taking that penalty. I do think like the rhetoric around Saka becomes a little bit different. Of like, oh, you can't hate on him because of what happened with him for a little bit, and I do think people tend to not be as hard on him. And I think he does deserve a little bit more scrutiny for not showing up in a lot of big games.
Yeah, I mean, to be anointed as like the guy for Arsenal and then go missing in these scenarios and just for weeks and weeks on end to not really contribute much. Like he plays hard, he plays well, but you got to be a different type of player to be the guy on your team, and I just don't think he's there yet.
Especially trying to be the guy on a team that claims to be title contenders.
Yeah, that too.
Despite him having a really good season last year, he kind of did a Rashford. I mean, Rashford had the season of his career last year too, and I know Saka's a lot younger, but we're not really talking about Rashford too much these days. Saka obviously has contributed more to this Arsenal team than Rashford has to United. It's not like Saka's gotten benched by kids that are way younger than him. But no, I completely agree, Isaac, and I think it's kind of this whole cloud that exists around English talent. There's kind of a glass dome around all of them. You know, you can only criticize them so much because, you know, they are young and they're supposed to be the stars. But like you, I like to hold people to the standard that they're talked about in, and Saka has not lived up to that, in my opinion, as of late.
And I think you could say that for a lot of their attacks. Some games, Martinelli is great, but he seems to only be great when he comes off the bench. You know what I mean? He started this game, didn't play particularly well.
Right.
Jesus had a good game. He had a goal and assist, so that's a good game. But I think if you look to their bench, I would just prefer Trossard a lot of the time. I think he's clinical. He's been in the Prem for a little bit longer than these guys at Brighton, and I think he's a player that you could probably use a little bit better than Arsenal do. I think they wait too long to put him on. They put him on the 78th minute. I get it, you're winning 2-0, you don't need an attacker, but I think in other circumstances
they put him on in midfield, which is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
Do they put him on in midfield?
Yeah, they'll use him in the 8 in Havertz's role.
Yeah.
Why would you use a player that's so good going forward there as so far away from goal? I'll just never understand. But I think that's all down to Arteta's overthinking.
Or it's a little bit of like protecting youngsters. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, Martinelli and Saka are young. Like we can't have these guys coming under scrutiny. If somebody does better under them, like it's not good for their brains because they're so young.
Yeah, I can see Arteta not wanting to bench them due to poor performances for more established players to kind of protect their mental sanity. I mean with the Saka stuff, he's a fantastic player. Don't get me wrong. He's just not what everybody's claiming he is. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah, I think he's earned the beginnings of his praise, but then I mean we saw so many like videos and clips on the internet of like, oh, I wouldn't trade Saka for anyone. That's my star boy. Like they labeled him as that, and it's become this bubble around him. And it's like him and Martinelli. It's like it's almost like Arteta is afraid that the fans will be pissed if he like performs any sort of like discipline, like putting them on the bench after a bad performance. Like you just have to. It's the stage in their careers that they need to learn that they're not untouchable. They're like they can improve and they need to improve. But speaking of Nottingham Forest dropping down the table and going into a relegation battle, on the other side of that, someone climbing, very surprisingly, but I've been rooting for them all season. Luton smashed Brighton 4-0 and have now, with a game at hand, pushed only 1 point behind Nottingham and 2 points behind Brentford, who we didn't really talk too much about going into the relegation zone, but with a 3-point gap, that's a single game. One team just drops points. You did mention it. Everton has dropped in, unfortunately, because of their point deduction. But Luton Town, what a performance by them against Brighton, who we've always touted to be such a quality team. I've always said it. I love Brighton, but what a game that was.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
stadium is small, but it is not. It's not an easy place to go to.
Oh,
I mean, you've seen Arsenal win 4-3. You saw Liverpool draw there, and then you see a Brighton team who's very good get just dismantled within 25 minutes. I think it was. Or no, they scored 2 in the opening 3 minutes, and then the one before half. But it was
pretty much over by then. And then though, I think
it was like I was watching
them away.
Going, Brighton's nothing. They're doing nothing here.
Yeah,
and that was something. So.
I just want to say I think we gotta give a big ups to Elijah Adebayo, hat trick in this game. I thought he was brilliant throughout, but I think it was one of those. It's one of those typical De Zerbi performances. You're always going to see this from his team every once in a while. We used to see it a lot in Serie A, where they're performing so well, and all of a sudden they throw up a crazy result where they play a bottom of the table team or a team that's fighting relegation, and they get smoked. And that was exactly the case here. And I think it's big ups to Luton. I know we all had them going down, but they're out of the relegation zone now. So let's see if they can keep going. They have that game in hand, so it would be quite the sight, I think, to see them survive the drop. But who knows?
Don't lump me in with you. I've always been rooting for Luton to stay up. I keep saying
most of us did say they were going down though in the prediction.
Yeah, and if I could just add my 2 cents, I think you kind of glossed over. I mean, a Luton hat trick at home. It's the first hat trick, I think, in Luton's history.
1990 was the last one. There was never
crazy because they got up before Rashford's first hat trick too. It's incredible.
Yeah. Can I take a stab at saying his full name? Did you guys see his full name?
Yes.
You want to go for it? Go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's probably going to take me longer to say it than it took Luton to score the opening goal of the game. But yeah, we saw a hat trick from Elijah Enoluwapo Oluwaferanmi Oluwatomi Oluwalana Ayomikulehin Adebayo.
What a name.
Yeah, it was a brilliant hat trick too. He took all 3 goals pretty well. And even if Luton go down, I think it was just such a cool result for those fans to have. That's a game that those fans will remember for the rest of their lives. I mean, if Luton go down, there's no guarantee that they'll get back into the Premier League. So to beat Brighton 4-0 at home, I mean, I thought that was an unbelievable result. The stadium was rocking. It was cool to watch. I think everybody was a Luton fan on the day.
Ross Barkley was very impressive again, running the midfield.
Yeah, it was just a stunning performance. Unfortunately for Brighton, just uncharacteristic of them. They did. I feel like if you look at their lineup, it's a little bit different than what they usually play. They tried to mix things up against Luton, but obviously did not get the result. If Luton do go down, which I hope they don't, I do feel like some of these players might stay in the Premier League for a couple of these lower mid-table teams, potentially a handful. But hopefully, if they can secure it, they could maybe venture their way back up and just keep flirting with the Premier League. But yeah, Ange, I have to agree. That is something that if even this season goes like down in turmoil, like that is a game that they won't forget for sure.
Can I ask you guys a question too? I actually want to get everybody's opinion on the state of Brighton now. It's 3 Premier League games straight without a goal. Do you think that? I mean, there's a number of things that come to mind. Is De Zerbi being kind of found out? Is his stock kind of decreasing, or is it more of, Brighton are clearly riddled with injuries right now? I mean, even the formation they played, the 3 at the back, it's not something we typically see, I feel like, from Brighton. I think De Zerbi might be a little out of answers right now, and it's a little worrying for me as someone who I am a big De Zerbi fan. I want the best for him. I think he is worthy of taking a top job, maybe something like the seat at Liverpool, which is now going to be open. We'll get to it later. There's going to be a couple hot jobs come the summertime. I think De Zerbi's name is going to be floating around. But what do you guys make of Brighton's situation? Do you think it's kind of just them getting unlucky with injuries?
Yeah, for me, they're being asked to be more than what they actually are, right? So they've been this team that kind of farms out these young players, creates a good system, puts them all in a good position to succeed, and then kind of go from there. But now they're kind of asked to be like namestays as these top, like a big six type team where they're expected to win, perform every game. It's just not what they are. They're not built for that. And then when you add in all those injuries they've had, and you've got Matoma that's out in the Asian Cup, it's been very important for them. It's like they're not, they shouldn't be expected to be performing like this with these kind of injuries. But then again, if you want to come and play with the big boys, you gotta be ready to go. So yeah, I think De Zerbi's probably overthinking it a bit, trying to get things going. But it's just, I think they're just not in a comfortable position, and this isn't really a place they should expect to succeed. But yeah, I think give them a little bit of time, and they'll probably be right back where we expect them.
I want to piggyback off that too, and I think De Zerbi is overthinking it, because if you look at the FA Cup results now, they've scored 9 goals in 2 FA Cup games.
Right.
The only difference I see is he's starting Evan Ferguson in the FA Cup games. Why is he not playing in the Premier League? I mean, Joao Pedro and Evan Ferguson, I was just looking at the stats, have combined for 6 goals in the 2 FA Cup games, and then it's kind of the same thing with Trossard at Arsenal. I mean, Evan Ferguson could be the catalyst for this Brighton team. I mean, he was being labeled a £120 million striker last season, and now he's got, splinters in his ass at Brighton. He can't get off the bench. I really don't get it. I think De Zerbi is kind of overthinking it. I hope he's not developing this like God complex, because I mean, he was being talked about as, the next coming of Pep in the Premier League, the beginning of his tenure with Brighton. So I don't know. I actually am kind of critical of him. I can't figure out why Evan Ferguson can't get a Premier League start.
One thing I will say, I just want to point out, I think for me, a step back at least this season was almost inevitable for Brighton, and at least in my perspective, because if you look at like this squad and a lot of these players, this is the first time any of them are competing in Europe. So I think that schedule, like that loaded schedule fixture in the first half of the season, I think it's really starting to take its toll now. And I mean, you gotta hope they get their shit together soon, because I mean, in a couple of weeks, those European ties are gonna come back around, and they're gonna be asked to be playing every 3 days again. So, I hope they do. I kind of expect them to do, especially when they have some of these players coming back. Like when we see Matoma come back from injury, he's integral to that team going forward. So, I think it's just a loaded fixture schedule combined with the injuries that's really putting Brighton in this place. I really don't think there's too much blame to put on De Zerbi. I know he does obviously chop and change a bit, but I think he's almost forced to at this point.
I think sometimes we get caught up in rooting for our big clubs in the fact that they lost Caicedo and McAllister. Like, those 2 players should not be forgotten about. Like, McAllister is running the show for Liverpool now, and Caicedo has had his ups and downs. But I don't put that on totally him, because they have 25 billion new players, so it's hard to make a team that has chemistry. And I do think it's easy for me as a Liverpool fan to be like, oh, like, we as a Liverpool fan, we lost our whole midfield and we just bought one. But that's not the option for like a team like Brighton. And I think that like they like this just has to happen, and not maybe a rebuild is too strong, but in a year where you lose 2 world class is strong, but very, very influential players.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like you're just gonna have these games now. Luton away 4-0 is something else that is maybe a little bit strong, but I still feel like the people don't give enough credit for losing McAllister and losing Caicedo. Additionally, though, you said that Evan Ferguson can't get a game. I do think it's interesting though, because he did it a little bit with Joao Pedro at the start too. Yeah, Angelo was telling me, he's like, "Yo, you got to put Joao Pedro in your fantasy team. I'm telling you." And I put him in, and like he did nothing, and I transferred him out. And of course, when I transferred him out, he scored. But he kind of like took his time. So like, part of me thinks like, oh, like there's a plan that he's just running through with him, and like he doesn't want to like put him in these situations where like he loses confidence just because he's not scoring. So I do think there is a little bit of a plan there.
Yeah, and I think to put my 2 cents before we move, like, just from a numbers point of view, there's still a lot of season left to play. But Brighton, in a league where we always say there's a top 6, sit 8th. Do you know what I mean? So considering there are only 2 places outside of what's considered a locked-in top 6, It's not terrible. They're not having an awful season. I agree that I think a step back was necessary just because of how many games they have to play now. But Mitoma is huge as far as importance to a squad. Mitoma ranks top 3 in the Premier League in terms of how important he is to his club. There's not many players that hold that sort of significance in how well they play as Mitoma does, and him being injured and then coming back, but then at the Asian Cup now is like prolonging him coming back into the team. And I do think there is questions.
I don't know if he's good, but top 3 in the Prem.
No,
strong.
as far as importance to the club, not by talent. Do you know what I'm saying? Like how much Brighton rely on him is top 3 versus how much every other club relies on one specific player. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know.
I get what you're trying to say.
They're definitely heavily reliant on him.
But that's what I mean. Like their whole game plan relies on Mitoma and how well he performs a lot of the time. I mean that, but I think Brighton are a really well-run club, and I think they have a plan. I mean, they have a lot of money in the bank now from their transfers, but they're not going to spend it all in one place. And they seem. I actually mentioned Gyökeres. We'll get to him later when we talk about Sporting, but he actually started as a Brighton product where they scoped him out of like a second division team in Sweden, and now he's one of the most informed players in Europe. So their whole building system is really well, and I believe they have a plan. But yeah, they are in a bit of a rut right now. But also those 2 games they don't score, they also didn't concede. This is the first time they've conceded in those last 2 games. They've also not scored, but it's not like they're conceding a lot of goals either. But
I mean, they conceded 4.
Oh, in this game
to Luton.
That's true.
Yeah,
you're not right. The next game on our list would be Newcastle versus Aston Villa. Aston Villa continuing to slip. I had hopes that they would stay in the top 4. Clearly, that was not the case as of right now. Newcastle were getting a little bit of form. They were also in a bit of a rut for a little while. I don't know if we have too much to say about this game, but a brace from Fabian Schär is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty tough loss to take if you're an Aston Villa fan. I mean, it's their first loss at home in 11 months. I think not including this game, the last 30 available points, they've picked up 28 at home. Sheffield United was the only team to take points off of them, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I think it was kind of a disappointing performance from Aston Villa all around. And Newcastle probably doing things that everyone expected them to do at the beginning of the season. So I don't know. It's the tough result, I think, if you're a Villa fan, definitely. And for Newcastle, great for the squad morale, definitely.
I think it's more than disappointing for Villa. I think you look at this game a month ago and you think, oh, Villa should kill them.
They're going to smash them. Yeah, I agree.
They're going to smack them. I was not expecting this result at all.
Me either.
I think Villa flew too close to the sun here a little bit and then started putting pressure on themselves and just crumbled to a Newcastle team that honestly has been they've been okay. But the end of December, they were awful. And they lost to City, which is fine. That's normal. And then they beat Fulham, which is a good win. But I think, this is a team that was killed by injuries and is still, rebuilding their team a little bit from coming back from all those injuries. I don't know. I think this is a huge disappointment from Villa, especially a chance to stay in the top 4 and you crumble. I think it's not great.
Yeah, I thought the same thing watching the game. And even the team that Newcastle fielded, if I was a Villa player, I would have been licking my lips seeing Jacob Murphy and Sean Longstaff start the game. Now, I know Joe Linton, I think, had surgery on his quadricep, and I think he might be out the whole season, or he might not be returning until May. So, I mean, he was obviously a really important piece in the midfield. I struggled to see how Aston Villa didn't take control of the game. I watched the whole game pretty closely. I mean, did Newcastle have a couple bright spots in their team? Yeah, Lewis Miley, I thought, was particularly impressive. Every time I watch him, he seems to amaze me more and more. But yeah, you're at home. I mean, there was a lack of this aura that existed when Villa hosted City and they hosted Arsenal, and even though they were level or down in those games, you kind of could feel oh, they're going to come back. At no point in this game did it feel like Villa was going to do anything to turn the tide, and it showed. I was pretty shocked.
Yeah,
I agree.
Did they too confident in that they were going to beat that team and they just let it go?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, for me, I mean, these two clubs are really very similar at the moment.
Yeah.
They're both historic clubs, really big clubs, and they dominate their regions. that have had great histories and recently have been poor until the last few seasons. So, I mean, they're on the same trajectory. They're both going to be fighting for those last top 6 spots. So, realistically, this should be a great game. But if you follow the forms that the teams have been on, you definitely expect Villa to be better. But Newcastle, barring their injuries throughout the season, you wouldn't be surprised if they were sitting in the Champions League spots this year. So, yeah, it's odd, and it's an odd result given the time of the season we're at, and if we look at the history of the season. But if preseason before this season started, this wouldn't be a surprising result, in my opinion. But yeah, given how things have gone, I'd be disappointed and probably a little bit worried if I'm a Villa fan, because we're looking good in the top 3, and now we're sitting down a little bit further down the table after a string of poor results.
I think it's interesting though, because it's a little bit what you said about Brighton. It's like, oh, like they're expected to be maybe better than they are, and I think it's different with them. I think they are better than Brighton, and I think that we can put that standard on them.
Yep.
But I do think that they have that Brighton tendency of, like wanting to be this good, getting talked about as being this good, but like when it comes down to it, they just never get across that line of like, okay, we can think of them as real. You guys said on your last podcast, like all of you were like, is Villa really going to stay there? And you were 100% right to say no, because they didn't within a month. But I do think it is another team that like, it's like, oh, every time they play a big club, as a Liverpool fan, every time they play a United or a Chelsea or an Arsenal, I'm like, that's a team that could like maybe cause some trouble for the other team. So yeah, I do think it's a massive disappointment for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, Villa was ready to go top of the league at some point around Christmas and New Year's, and now they're sitting in 5th, at level with 4th Tottenham. But still, they've gone through a little bit of a rough patch. But again, like we said, this is the area they should expect to be at. So you'd be concerned about the form, but not necessarily about where you are throughout the season.
Yeah, I think Villa would do good to and would be happy with European place in 5th. I think I think they'd be kicking themselves, like we mentioned, like you were just saying, Jay, about not taking the opportunity to go top of the table. But I think if they can finish 5th at the end of the season, they can lick their wounds and move on and look at next season to sort of improve from there.
They might be a little worried now, though.
Yeah, no,
like,
absolutely.
I mean, you let this slip, and it's like, if you're a Villa fan, are you thinking like, well, how much more are we going to slip here? Like, I feel like they should be able to turn around fast if they want to stay in this. Still a lot of season to go, so
absolutely
they still gotta keep it going.
Another team looking to improve and have been improving and now have almost all of their weapons on their arsenal back. Man City won 3-1 against Burnley. Obviously an expected result, nothing too surprising. However, another bit of the same of the conversation and clip that we actually had posted last week or the week before. We go from KDB coming on as a super sub for Phil Foden to now Julian Alvarez on a brace, and then having a sub come on by the name of Erling Haaland is absolutely insane. So City are just wallowing in the world's best problems, picking between...
To be quite frank, it makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, too, is, your backup striker bags a brace in this game again. I mean, Julian Alvarez was great. It was 2 good finishes. It's insane. We were kind of concerned that Foden's form would maybe dip with the inclusion of KDB started, but it certainly didn't look like it today. He was on the board with an assist. KDB had a brilliant assist. Obviously, it wasn't really from open play. It was the type of pass that KDB and only a few others would see to make, and it was perfectly weighted. I mean, it was a good finish, but yeah, like you said, the results haven't really changed for City, and their squad is getting stronger and stronger by the week as more players are reintroduced into the squad. So, going to be breathing down Liverpool's neck, I think.
Yeah,
nothing bad has ever happened though in this circumstance. So
yeah.
No,
I don't have like PTSD.
City have no chance.
We're good.
Yeah, 5 points. The game at hand. That's not too bad. That's not
Yeah.
bad.
And I think the crazier part for City is this looks like more of a rotation team that they played today too, and they're still able to. I mean, granted, relegation Burnley is not the best opponent, but yeah, you get Mateus Nunes getting games in. You still got on the bench that doesn't get on Kyle Walker, Ruben Diaz, Bernardo Silva. So they're just spoiled for riches right now.
This
Kyle
is insane.
Walker.
This is
Crazy.
insane.
Kyle Walker's too busy shagging.
Yeah, that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Not to mention.
Yeah, my right back doesn't cheat on his wife. That's all that matters. He's a
Before
good
we
person.
before we move, I want to highlight Jeremy Doku. I know he was I always thought he was a really good player, and then when City signed him, flop. You think so?
That's what the streets are saying.
The
Didn't hear it from me.
Oh, Andrew, you from the streets?
I'm not of that opinion personally. I think I had thought that it was going to take longer for him to get into the team, and then he kind of got starting minutes really quickly and performed pretty well. He slowed down, but I mean it's his first season in a team that's well established. In a team that I personally didn't think they needed a player in his position. Zach, who hasn't been on for a couple of weeks, but is a City fan, had told me before that, Leroy Sané had given City a sense of pace, and they didn't really have that. Someone who was a real speedster, and Jeremy Doku gives them a little bit of that, I guess. But I don't think he's been a flop. I think he had a decent performance in this game. He doesn't get on the score sheet or register an assist, but
I agree. I think he's done great with the opportunities he's been given. They've been pretty few and far between. So I think, all things considered, especially with the players he's competing with, I mean, there are no slouches in Foden and Grealish and even Alvarez at times if he's going to play out wide. So I think, considering where he's at in his career, his first year in the Premier League, I think he's done pretty well with what he's got.
Yeah.
I mean, when you
especially
think
in a
about
team
it,
like City.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's gonna sometimes have their game. Like they're not short on goals. They just don't have a main man unless it's Haaland.
Yeah.
Like I even think you can take 5 games off and they'd be fine.
That's the beauty of it too, is you can buy these expensive young players and there's not the pressure on them to contribute right away. And yeah, I made the joke of him being a flop, but it kind of just reminds me of like Grealish's first season. Like Grealish's first season off that same side was a little underwhelming, and then
he's a flop though. It's different.
Is he? I guess he is. I was just gonna say I feel like I was gonna say Grealish went on to not really be a flop because I felt like last season he was pretty influential. I mean, he ended up becoming a mainstay, at least in the side that Pep was fielding in the Champions League. But yeah, I think Jeremy Doku will be fine. He's way more talented than Grealish, in my opinion. So I'm not too concerned.
A lot younger too, and I think a lot of Grealish's scrutiny was the price tag, and Doku didn't come with as significant as a price tag, so I think a little bit less to talk about.
Definitely a lot less pressure on him.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, City's in all the teams they've had the last few years, they've always had an out-and-out winger. And since Mahrez left, you kind of didn't really have one. You kind of have some attackers that kind of can play on the wing and stuff, but they've always had like a Mahrez, a Sané, Sterling. They've always had these great wide players. So yeah, it was definitely interesting when they kind of started without one. So I thought it would be pretty easy for him to get in just for his play style, not even having to contribute. I think he just would have had success in this team.
Yeah.
I also think it's just like that's why Grealish got labeled a flop, is because it's like, Pep's gonna take his time because he doesn't need to put you in the team. It's like we're just gonna develop you a little bit.
And I also think he was asked to play a position that he wasn't necessarily comfortable with because he was playing that wide role that Doku's playing, and it doesn't fit him as a player. Yeah. He likes to play more central and kind of everything through him, but you can't do that when you have Foden, De Bruyne, and Bernardo Silva in the team. The ball's not going through you.
Yeah. One last little mention of a game before we get into the big one. Spurs narrowly beat Brentford 3-2. Timo Werner still playing really well. I'm actually happy to see him playing well in the Premier League in his second stint here, because I thought he was an excellent player when he played for Leipzig. So it's nice to see Richarlison getting on the score sheet. Spurs looking like they can show us that they can score despite not having their talisman in Son, as he's away at the Asian Cup. So another decent performance. Got to work on probably not conceding as much, but not too bad. But moving on to the big one, why we have Isaac here in the first place. Liverpool just finished as we were recording, spanking Chelsea 4-1, and what a performance that was. I do have a highlight, but I think I'll leave the floor for Isaac to just give us his thoughts right at the get go. How did you feel that game went? Obviously went well, but
I mean, it should be more than 4. Darwin Nunez, of course, as he does, breaks records. He broke the record for the most times you hit a post in a Premier League game in like the 21 years they've been collecting stats, which included a penalty. So 4 was an understatement. Yeah, I think Chelsea looked awful, and Liverpool just breezed through this game. I think there was an early penalty shout for Chelsea in the first half, and I don't think it was a penalty. And besides that, they did nothing, really. And Liverpool did whatever they want. I mean, we had a 20-year-old Connor Bradley, the Trent reincarnation, have a goal and 2 assists, and he looked phenomenal. And this team just keeps going. So it was fantastic to watch. I was relaxed. I was calm. It was great.
Yeah, it was a bit of a demolition derby. Pretty embarrassing result for Chelsea. I thought Diego Jota's goal summed the game up really well. He absolutely stormed through Chelsea's back line. He took hold of the ball and slotted in a goal that I think he made look pretty easily. I mean, he had Badiashile draped all over him, but he didn't care. I think that goal really highlighted the determination of this team. They were all on the same page. It was a fiery game from Liverpool. They absolutely made Chelsea choke. They really couldn't breathe. There weren't too many attacks that Chelsea could string together. I didn't really like the team personally that Poch fielded, but either way, I mean, that was no way for Chelsea to come out into that game. They just looked dead. I mean, I know it's Anfield away, and I never would have expected Chelsea to win this game, but I think there's a way you lose these big games, and Chelsea certainly didn't keep any of their pride today.
Yeah,
I agree. That goal. Go ahead.
My 2 biggest takeaways from this game is, first of all, I think that I've been saying it the last couple of weeks now, but if Liverpool's relentlessness hasn't been back yet, it's most certainly back now.
Yeah.
They're definitely firing on all cylinders. And I want to say, if there's ever a shout that they're going to be fine without Mo Salah, it is this game. Because the loss, I mean, they really have not missed a beat at all without him. I mean, you would almost not even know that he's a Liverpool player if you weren't that well aware of the Premier League. They play so well without him. It's really incredible in my opinion. And also, I just want to big up Connor Bradley. I mean, this kid's been balling lately on the right side. I've been thoroughly impressed with him. I think he like you said, he is like a Trent reincarnation. He almost looks like you could slot him in midfield and he'd do just as well there, stringing the passes along. He plays a lovely cross into the box. His technique is brilliant. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him when Trent's, now that he's back healthy, if he's going to lose his spot or if Trent moves into the midfield. So it's gonna be really cool to see what happens with this Liverpool team. I'm certainly excited to see where they go going forward.
I wanted to touch on Connor Bradley too. Now, if I remember correctly, Liverpool had kind of this bad habit of conceding the first goal.
Ultimately, 3-1 victories early in the season.
Yeah, and ultimately their quality kind of propelled them to wins. What strikes me the most watching this Liverpool team with Bradley is the back line seems a lot more stable. Maybe that's easy to say because the one con with Trent's play obviously was his defensive mishaps. It was almost becoming a bit of like a Maguire meme, and I think people were overanalyzing Trent's defending, and it was kind of leading to errors being highlighted than maybe more than they should be highlighted. But the one thing I did like about Connor Bradley is I think he's like a pretty stout defender. I mean, Sterling didn't really have much luck going down his side of the field. Sterling, somebody who was a multiple-time Premier League champion. I mean, he was one of the better players in the league for a number of years. I know Gianluca brought up Connor Bradley's like technical ability with the ball at his feet, but what actually stuck out to me was his ability to defend and how much he shored up Liverpool's back line. I mean, they haven't conceded too much with him in the side. We'll see if it continues, but I mean, what a story. I mean, to get his first goal in the Premier League at Anfield, it was just really a beautiful moment, and it's another player that Klopp is going to bring through in this team, and I thought it was really beautiful to see him start in Klopp's first Premier League game after the announcement of him leaving. I just thought it was a perfect like embodiment of Klopp's time with Liverpool. It was nice to see.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring up the defensive thing of like us not conceding first, because I do think like Trent, we all know that Trent like has his defensive issues, but I also think like we don't give enough credit to Joe Gomez, who's coming for Robertson.
Yeah, he's been good too
on the left side and the right side. Like people forget that Liverpool won the Premier League with Van Dijk and Joe Gomez, and he's come in and played right back and left back for us, and he's so like incredibly underrated in this Liverpool team, because he comes on and he's not great going forward. He's never scored for Liverpool, but he's like lockdown defense, and I think that also attributes to it of like you have this like very, very good defender who is playing both right and left side and shutting down wingers. But I do think you're right. Connor Bradley had this game, shut down Sterling. Modric came on. Modric's not the best, but he's quick. And Connor Bradley didn't make him look quick. And that's a sign of a good defender, is you don't give him the chance to run.
Yeah. So, it's too bad Patrick's... Yeah, it's too bad Patrick's not here, too, because he's harped on Konate's form pretty much every episode, every time we bring up Liverpool. Yeah. I mean, he's becoming he's kind of a Rolls-Royce defender himself, too, just like Van Dijk was, and still is, really, for a number of years. But, yeah, the Liverpool back line is starting to look pretty formidable, too. I think earlier in the season, teams might have thought, well, they're conceding first, if we can nick the first goal, maybe we can get a point, but that seems to have dried up. They look absolutely incredible, and they're still in first place for a reason.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Liverpool's youth development, because I don't think they get enough credit for what they've done over the last probably 5-6 years. Because I mean, it starts with Joe Gomez and Trent, but now you've got getting regular contributions from players like Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott. Granted, they may not have started with them, but they developed them young. And now you've got players like Connor Bradley, and you've got a bunch of guys who've been playing recently in cup games. They got
even Bobby Clark too. This kid.
Yep. Yeah, so they've gotten a ton of these young kids coming in who are able to compete and play in the same level, and it looks plug and play. So that's definitely credit. I'd probably give the credit to Klopp, to be honest, because I would probably say it's his initiative to get these guys, or the club rather, to develop these guys and then create a system where they can slot right in and contribute right away. So I hope, for your sake, Isaac, that doesn't go away with Klopp, because as Benfica does that all the time with developing their own talent, it's very useful and very valuable, and it's definitely cool to say.
I actually want to say I'm glad you brought up the youth development. You just made me remember. I don't know if you saw, but I stuck my headphone in for a minute or two there, because Klopp was giving his post-game little interview, and it's funny that you said I'd probably give the credit to Klopp for the youth development, and you'd actually be wrong. And one of the things that just stuck out in the interview he just gave was Klopp actually said that, my youth team coaches are in my ear all the time, advocating for these kids. He said that he's known about Connor Bradley for about 3 seasons now, and Klopp, the exact quote is, "I actually have the easiest job of all, and that's just to put them on the pitch with the first team." And he basically was giving tremendous credit.
We're not losing that.
Yeah, he was basically giving tremendous credit to the youth team coaches for developing them so much. But I agree. I'm sure Klopp is in his ear like, "Hey guys, look, you need to bleed these players." And something else he actually said was, he was actually kind of talking a little bit of shit, and I kind of liked it. Klopp was saying, in the summer, he was like, everybody wanted us to bring in a right back, right? He was like, everybody was saying we need to back up to Trent. He's like, well, there's reasons why Liverpool operates the way they do. And that was when he had said, I've known about this kid for 3 years. He was like, it was the perfect time to breed him into this side. And I mean, he hit the nail on the head, timing wise, because I mean, he's fit in perfectly, probably better than Klopp and any of the youth teams would have even expected him to. So he's been great.
I mean, more goals and assists in 2 appearances than Anthony, so that says something.
From right back, right?
From right back.
Actually, quick question, piggybacking on that, Isaac. If you're Klopp next game, big game against Arsenal next week, do you sit Bradley after this kind of form, or Trent 1 game back? Do you put him starting that game?
I don't know how injured Trent is. You know what I mean? He just came back. there is a conversation now, but I'm still taking Trent. I think Bradley is very good, but I'm still taking Trent just because he's world class on the ball.
Right.
But I'm not mad if they play Bradley. I totally get it. I don't have a strong opinion, but I do think that I'd still choose Trent a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. One crazy thing I noticed with all these Liverpool dudes, they all look the same. All the youth players, like they all look
the same.
They all look like Football Manager, like regens of like the young players of like the fake faces. That's what they all look like. It's crazy. They all look the same. Same haircut and everything.
With Liverpool Chelsea being our like match of the episode, I think it's only right that we now kind of analyze Chelsea a little bit more. I have a lot of questions to ask of Pochettino. I know what I led off with saying was I didn't particularly like the formation, so I want to go into that more. I really don't like this idea of Cole Palmer being a false nine. He's been Chelsea's most influential player this season by a mile. And I just don't like that now these past couple of games he's kind of isolated Palmer from build-up play altogether. I mean, he's stuck him out on an island against the most informed Premier League team. I mean, we just finished talking about how even more stable the Liverpool backline is. Do you guys think Poch is kind of had an underwhelming start? I always like to look at the discipline side of things too. Now you had both fullbacks, or actually it was both, the whole midfield pair was booked. I mean, like 30 minutes into the game. Obviously, they're away at Anfield, and the game got away from them very quickly, and there was no recovering. But do you think that's kind of a trickle-down effect from the manager? Because for me, that's one of the telltale signs of a team like really starting to struggle, is the discipline and the way in which they lose games. Like, you know, I know Chelsea is not in the top 6 right now, but they spent a lot of money. They're expected to compete in this big games no matter how bad their form gets. And I just like was kind of almost offended at the way Chelsea approached this game and carried themselves. It was gross to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea's tough because, like, I mean, they've been on a really good run. They haven't lost in the Prem since Christmas Eve until today.
Yeah, but like,
so I mean, if you think about it, this is probably the worst job.
They haven't beaten anybody though. They beat Palace.
They were losing to nobody too.
Fulham, like.
They were losing to all these teams last year.
They lost to Middlesbrough.
The games
they lost the game one after.
It's games that they should be winning though. Like I just don't.
I mean, right. They definitely should have way underperforming, but it seemed like they finally kind of clicked a bit and they got something going. But yeah, I agree. I don't know how you pick up a City player and don't involve them in build-up. Like I wouldn't expect them to score a goal. I just put them in build-up because that's literally what you need to expect them for. That's what you expect out of them, rather. But yeah, it's tough. They can't get a back line set. I don't know why even bother playing Chilwell because I don't think him or Reece James have finished the game in probably a year and a half.
Chilwell should actually be ashamed. He fucking sucked, and
Chilwell was their worst
at
player.
both times he dove once in the box and once in the sideline. Like he was somebody. He's captain Chelsea today, and he's captained them before. Like you don't. For him to be diving like that, it was too. I don't know. It was desperate. Maybe I'm being a little harsh because I do agree like that, and that's what I think kind of makes me a little passionate in this rant is that like Chelsea was starting to gather steam. So like I understand you're going away to league leading Liverpool, and Anfield is not an easy place to go, but they just squandered any momentum that they had gathered from these last couple games, and now I feel like it's back to square one again. I mean, I guarantee Pochettino will have a different 11 next game. He cannot play this 11. I mean, I don't see how they move forward. Madueke won't start.
Maybe that's a mindset thing. Like, we had this momentum.
Yeah,
right? And
who do you think?
Being like, we have this momentum. But him in his mind being like, we haven't beaten a team like good. And so like maybe it's him just being like, we were never going to beat Liverpool anyways. Like, it just seems like they showed up to play. Like if they were not in the game ever.
And that's a good point you raised too, because maybe like they'll just take this one on the chin, and it's Liverpool away, and who knows? I mean, they might come out next week I think they have look at the schedule. They have Wolves at home. Like, who knows? Like, they might beat Wolves at home, and I'll have egg on my face. But I just think, like, there's a way you can still kind of continue momentum. There was 0 positives to take for Chelsea from this game. That's just
Kunku had a goal, which was nice.
Yeah,
I
give credit where it's due. I think besides Mudryk, the players that came off the bench for more than 5 minutes actually performed probably the best in the whole team. Which I guess like if you said if he is gonna field a whole new 11, these Malagusto better be in it. Chukwuemeka, I don't know how to say his name, but he bags the assist and clearly has he had a better performance too. I think closing out the game, so maybe he should just start. I think you just need to reward these players, and Kunku could play in front of Cole Palmer, so Cole Palmer can actually build up. And Kunku is a player that has in the past been used to getting isolated up top and then bagging goals while he's up there.
Yeah,
with a little bit of service. So. Yeah, I think he just needs to readjust and try to regain that steam that, like you were saying, they were building, because this is absolutely embarrassing.
Yeah, real quick too, I just wanted to say, I mean, we've been talking about Chelsea struggling for goals lately. I mean, how do you not play a striker? That just is mind-boggling to me. I really don't understand.
And they're trying to sell Broja for $50 million.
And they're gonna send Broja out on loan. Like that, you're
I don't know why he didn't play. I thought he was hurt, and then I just looked at the bench and he was chilling.
Dude, he doesn't know what he's doing. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crap situation to get thrown into. Like, I wouldn't want that job at all.
Yeah.
But you got to work with what you got, and then you got to make moves to kind of get there. But
it's also like he has a lot. They spent so much money. It's not like.
But so where is it? Where'd the money go?
Right, it's
money.
Like
those players are dog shit.
You know,
you're absolutely right.
Because I don't know what happened. Because if like we've been, Isaac, I don't know if you've picked up on it, but every week in week out we talk about how good this Liverpool midfield has been. But if you look at like Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo last season, right, when they're at Benfica and at Brighton, that's two of the most in-form midfielders in across Europe. Do you know what I mean? Like Enzo had a great World Cup, great half season with Benfica, and now you put them side by side in a pretty decent role with the likes of like a Cole Palmer potentially in front of them, and they just get embarrassed and ran over. It's like, what the fuck is like, yeah, Pochettino's not making great choices, but some of these players are just like inconsistent and just not at all tapping into the boatloads of potential that they have, I think.
You should have heard the roar when Caicedo got subbed off.
Oh yeah, dude, wasn't that crazy?
That was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely didn't forget that it was between Liverpool and Chelsea. He must be. Yeah, that's a good. I can only imagine what's going through his head right now. He must feel like an idiot.
Yeah.
Money talks.
But I do think it does say something to Liverpool and to Chelsea. It's like, they both bought new midfields, and only one of them's made it work. I do think Fernandez is a quality player. Caicedo's a quality player. It's just something. It's just. I don't know. I think if you feel such a different team every week, it's hard to build some consistency within it.
And you raise a great point, Isaac, because there's no doubt in my mind that Caicedo would be twice the player in Liverpool's team right now.
Right. I was thinking that. He would be
and
good
with Chelsea now, it's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. To wrap up the Premier League, we don't have Patrick here today, but that's okay, because by the time this pod posts, only United then will have played. So we'll be able to catch that conversation next week. But it's about that time in the episode where we move on and hand the floor over to our Italians who run us through the Italian league. So by all means, take it away, gentlemen.
Where do you want to start, Gianluca? There wasn't too much, I think, in the Serie A. Do you want to just kind of trickle down in order?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So basically, we saw Atalanta defeat everybody's now least favorite club in the Serie A, Udinese, rightfully so. It was 2-0. My old friend CDK, who I'm kind of starting to miss, is playing really good. I think he has double-digit assists and double-digit goals on the season for Atalanta in all competitions. It's looking like their option to buy is going to be an absolute bargain. He was unbelievable in this game. Yeah,
I agree 100%. I think he's been really impressive this season. And my My spotlight would go to Miranchuk, actually. I think he's been really, really good for Atalanta the last few weeks. He's really stepped into that role with Lookman away at AFCON, and he's been brilliant. I think he's propped up with pretty much a goal and an assist in every game that he's played, and he did it again this weekend. So big ups to him. I think he's been really, really influential.
Yeah, it seems like whoever Gasparini sticks in those kind of supporting cast roles to the strikers always concede. And speaking of the striker, Gasparini and especially Luciano Spalletti have been very, very critical of Scamacca and his inability to contribute to teams. It looks like he gets kind of leggy. He doesn't run for the team. It was good to see him score because I have absolutely no idea who Italy's number 9 is going to be going into the Euros, and I can't say I'd be super confident in Scamacca if he's going to be donning the number 9 for the Azzurri. So it was a welcome sign to see him score. But other than that, standard result for Atalanta. They've moved into the top 4, and they have a game at hand on Roma. So it looks like the top 4 in Italy might start to cement itself here soon.
You said everybody. It's Udinese is everybody's least favorite team now. As an arrogant Prem fan, why is that?
Well, it was just because of the controversy last week involving Mike Magnan with the racist abuse he received.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Udinese fans. Yeah, I know it's not really the club's fault. There's actually an update on that. I saw that Udinese actually banned a couple fans, so it's good to see that they can act.
They walked on that, right?
Yeah, it was kind of nuts.
I remember seeing that.
I will say this right here is a great advert to make sure you're keeping up with all the Sons of Pitches podcast, because we bring you all the news you may not keep up with.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's right.
You get everything right here.
Well, yeah, I don't have anything else to add on the Atalanta game, so we might have well move to probably my favorite match of the weekend. Was Juventus-Empoli. We saw Juventus drop points. Finally, it looked like they were kind of invincible. Arkadiusz Milik kind of let the team down. He had an early red card, and that kind of spelled doom for the Juventus side that were able to take the lead in this game. But it was a moment of brilliance from young Tommaso Baldanzi, who was kind of the man of the hour on the blue continent. He's made a move to Roma, but he scored a brilliant goal, in my opinion, with his weak foot outside the box. He had Szczesny rooted to the spot. And he grabbed Empoli a huge point. Empoli, a team we kind of highlighted last week, they're off the back of a 3-0 win. It's 4 points in their last 2 games now, and it looks like they're going to take a pretty good stab at getting out of the relegation zone. There's a lot of teams down there. From 15th to 19th, there's only 2 points separating everyone, so every point's going to be pretty crucial. But it's an Empoli side who've kind of had Juventus's number. I remember. They beat them a season or 2 ago as well, and even last season they won 4-1 at home. So kind of interesting to see their form continue against Juventus. What did you think of the game, John Luca? Were you able to see it? Or
yeah, I did. I thought it was actually a great display from Empoli. I know they're a man up, but to dictate play the way they did and to move the ball around and really push on to try and get a result out of this game was very encouraging for their survival hopes. And like you said, my boy Baldanzi, boy, am I excited to see this kid play, because I mean he was great for us in the U20 World Cup in the summer. I really enjoyed watching him play in that tournament, and I really learned a lot about him last season with his performances for Empoli. So I'm just thoroughly impressed, and it was really nice to see him leave Empoli with a little parting gift and secure a point in their fight for survival, because that's huge for them.
Yeah, he's a player that I like to claim putting you on to. I still remember when he scored his first goal. It was an absolute screamer, and I remember showing Gianluca. I said, "Who the hell is this kid? What a goal he scored!" And it looks like he might fulfill his potential. We'll see if the move to Roma lucks out for him. It's not a move I'm too excited about for him in his career personally, but he's going to have a great mentor in Paulo Dybala, so we'll see. But with that, move to probably my least favorite game of the weekend was AC Milan versus Bologna at home. It was a very wasteful Milan. We spurred 2 penalties in this game. Not that fun to watch, but Bologna were excellent. I know Bologna have been in bad form, but they weren't really afraid in this match going away to the San Siro. Thiago Motta has that team playing a pretty interesting system. And I remember breaking down the game with John Luca. I really like how much both center backs get involved. They kind of like revert into a two-back almost at times, with a fullback pushing out wide and the center back becoming part of this bank of four in midfield. I always admired, or at least so far this season, I've admired Bologna's ability to die on their own sword. Even when things aren't going their way, they're still going to play the brand of football that they're used to, and they grabbed two pretty good goals from it. I mean, Joshua Zirkzee scored a really tough goal from a tough angle, not something that I thought Milan should have conceded. I personally thought Theo Hernandez should have done better, but, I mean, he's not the best man-on-man defender, but yeah, Zirkzee was great. He scored his 8th goal in the Serie A. I think he really showed why a lot of the top teams, including Milan, are chasing his signature in the summertime. But we'll see. It was a good result for Bologna. They were kind of struggling. They still haven't won in a couple games. I think it's 5 now. Yeah, 5 games in a row. So we'll see if they can muster together some momentum and climb back up the table. They were in 4th place for a while. But I actually kind of wanted to highlight them more so than Milan. The only player that really impressed me from Milan was he grabbed the base. He's playing in this number 10 role. I don't know how much I credit Pioli with that. I just think we don't really have like your typical number 10 type of player. He deployed Kessie a lot in the number 10 role. He deployed Rade Krunic a lot in the number 10 role, and now it seems to be Loftus-Cheek. The only thing I will say is, when you can deploy such a figure in the number 10 role in between lines, he really had Bologna thinking, and they weren't really marking him too well. Obviously, he scored 2 kind of carbon copy goals, runs into the box, good finishes. But yeah, I was pretty pleased with his performance.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I thought his runs to the box were really impressive throughout the whole game. I think he was probably the Milan player that impressed me the most in this game, just the way he was able to provide an extra option in the middle. And on those crosses, because we know how dangerous those balls in the box can be for Milan when they already have the likes of Giroud there. But from the Bologna perspective, I have to say, I mean, Zirkzee, what a player. I mean, the nonchalantness to his game, it's so fun to watch. I mean, it almost looks like he doesn't even care at times, and he has the ball on a string. He's not running hard, but he's going exactly where he wants to, and he's going to get there. And it's just so much fun to watch. I think it's a credit probably to Thiago Motta to use him the way he's been using him, because I mean he was a Bayern Munich product, and I think if you don't fit into that team, it's probably difficult for you to find your foothold in another team, especially in a team of Bologna's level. So I mean, to see him performing the way he has been really all season, it's just big ups to him. I think he's been great.
Yeah, I actually had a question for you, Ange. It might have an easy answer, it might not, but I know despite Giroud getting on the score sheet pretty often, more or less, despite your scrutiny and you're not being the biggest fan week in, week out. He does miss a pen and probably doesn't play all that well in this game, but then his replacement, Jokic, also comes on and doesn't have the best performance. I was going to ask whether or not it was time to get Jovic a starting role in the next game, but he also doesn't play well. So how do you feel? Is it time to maybe try someone else out up front from minute 1, or do you?
No, it's not. I don't think it's time yet. I of course was let down with the penalty, but then even the second penalty we switched penalty takers and still missed. So right. I don't know. The only thing I will say is I'd like to see Rafael Leao take this team by the balls and step up and take a penalty, especially after Giroud missed the first one. I know he's not much of a penalty taker, but I mean, you wear the number 10 shirt for AC Milan. I mean, I think him adding penalty scoring to his game could be something that could take him to the next level in his career. Personally,
he's been missing a bit recently.
Giroud take all the penalties usually?
It's usually him or Theo Hernandez. If Giroud's not in the side, Theo Hernandez usually steps up and takes them. But when you hear Theo Hernandez on a penalty spot, you definitely don't think calm, composed finish. He just kind of hits it as hard as he can and prays. He probably closes his eyes before he shoots. He took the penalty like he closed his eyes. So yeah, it kind of sucked. I mean, I really don't think we should have had this game. And even the way we lost kind of sucked. I felt bad. We had Filippo Terracciano come on and make his Serie A debut for Milan. And and he's at the back post, tugging shorts, giving away penalties at the death. And Orsolini came up and slotted his penalty. He's been a pretty reliable player for Bologna over the years. So, yeah, it sucked, to be honest. It was a tough result to take. The only thing that's kind of good is, like, we have a 10-point gap between fourth. I can't see us falling out of the Champions League places, so that's nice. I mean, it is credit to Pioli, and we didn't lose the game. We're on a nice little run, so we'll see. It just kind of sucks because I can't see us winning the league, and I can't see us falling out of the Champions League, so I'm kind of just sitting here waiting for Europa League, to be honest. So we'll see.
It's funny you bring up Leao because I have a question of his attitude. I mean, I follow him closely. I think he's a great player. He's obviously Portuguese, but also comes out of the Sporting Academy. So he's someone I care about. And he's made comments in the media recently saying that, like, if he was more of a selfish player, he'd have more goals scored or whatever it was.
He is a selfish player.
Like, but yeah, sometimes he does act like that. So it's weird. Is he not, like you said, like, you wish he would step up, but is he, like, doing it to maintain that image? Like, I have a question about his attitude. It seems to be his worst quality. He just doesn't dig his head down into a game. He either feels it or he doesn't. And if he scores, then he's happy. And if he's not, then he doesn't care.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right in your analysis that his worst quality would be his attitude, but I think he's starting to enter in this, like, mid-understood realm. Personally, he's kind of becoming an enigma on and off the field. I mean, he has a hand in the rap game. He has a big hand in fashion. I think he's becoming a bit of a mogul. Not to say that I think that's getting to his head and affecting his on-field performances, but I think Leao's doing fine. I mean, he's what do you call it? He's kind of a luxury player in a way. You know, you're happy to have him in your side. I think he's worth a lot of money. If PSG came calling and paid $100+ million, I don't think many people would be surprised by the fee. Right. And I think that speaks to his level of play. I mean, he's our best player. He's the most talented player I've ever seen, to be honest, play for Milan, if not named Zlatan, at least in my lifetime. I hope he spends his career with Milan. I want to buy his jersey, but I'm afraid to because it seems like every time I buy a Milan player's jersey, they leave or retire. So we'll see. I'm not too concerned, at least as much as the Milan Twitter fans are, with Leao's attitude. I still think he's the first name on the team sheet, in my opinion. So
I think. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think with Leao, it's kind of like reminding me of like a early 2000s, late 90s Brazilian player where they have all this talent and they just they're more interested in other things and they don't really want to put their head down and work. And because I think Leo has a talent to be one of, like, competing for, like, getting into a World XI every year. He has that talent. I just don't think he has the willpower or the desire to work as hard to get there.
Yeah, and I didn't want to disrespect the great Ronaldinho by comparing Leao to Ronaldinho because by no means are they on the same level. But yeah, there is a little Ronaldinho. There's a little bit of a Robinho to his mindset. He was a player who used to kind of wind me up when he was a Milan player. It's like, does he really care? The only difference is I think Leao, like, is very passionate about Milan. I think he's serious when he says that he wants to become an icon in the city and for the team. I mean, maybe this is biased. I really don't think it is, but there's not too many more iconic clubs that you could don the number 10 shirt for than AC Milan. I think he realizes that, and I think he has a good head on his shoulders. He's still pretty young. He's only going to get wiser. I think, to be honest, his attitude has kind of gotten better now that Zlatan is back at the club, and that goes really for the whole team. I think, we kind of talked about it last weekend. With De Rossi going back to Roma, but figures like that around the club, there's Zlatan's, especially Maldini was, of course, obviously loved by everybody associated with Milan. It's kind of security blankets, and I think it keeps everyone's heads on their shoulder, not even just Leao. So, well, those are good questions.
Yeah.
Do you want to move? We can move now, I guess. We'll talk about the Roma game next. I can give you the floor for that. Gianluca now was a Roma side who seemed to continue their form. It's nice to see Pellegrini score again. A 2-0 win. What did you make of it?
2-1 actually, but I have to
2-1,
say, it was quite a struggle in my opinion. We were god awful in the first half. We didn't even register a shot on target. Salernitana were definitely the more threatening side. They probably could have gone in front before the break. That man Kandreva, he always shows up on the big occasions. He was always
Roma's not really the biggest team, but that's probably why he didn't score.
You know who he is, so he'll always be there. I mean, he scored.
I knew you were going to say that. I was waiting to say that.
He did score 2 bangers on us in the first time we played them this season. But other than that, I thought I have to give a lot of credit to De Rossi. Actually, I thought whatever he might have said to them at halftime or whatever tactics he changed, something changed, something clicked, and right away you could see it from the minute the second half kicked off. We looked a completely different side. We were immediately on the front foot. Dybala slotted home a penalty for us, probably 5 minutes after the restart, I think it was. And then, like you said, Pellegrini back on the score sheet again. Someone that I've been dying to see turn his form around because he's probably the most important midfielder in this team, I think, because he's really that link that can bring the team from defense to midfield to attack. And when he's not there, we really struggle with that. And it's just long ball city. So it's good to see him back performing. But other than that, I really don't have too much to say. I am, however, extremely, extremely excited to see what Baldanzi can do in this team. I know you said you don't think it's the best move for him for his career, but I think it's actually one of the better moves he could have made because I think, unlike the other teams in the top half of the table in Italy, Roma are kind of short for options in that position of like an attacking midfielder, second striker. We obviously have one of the best to ever do it in Paulo Dybala, in my opinion, but he is most certainly not the most fit guy in the world, and he's definitely missed a game here and there. And other than Dybala, his only competition in that position is really El Shaarawy. And I think a kid of Baldanzi's talent should be taking that spot all day, and I think he's going to cement a place in this team. And I think having someone like De Rossi there to instill that Roma mindset in him is going to be perfect. And I'm very excited to see what he does. I'm also really excited to see Angelino. He's a pretty talented left wing back who we've just brought in from Leipzig.
Yeah, good signing.
And
It is a good signing.
yeah, I think it's a great signing because that's a position that we really lack options in. Spinazzola is another one that's always never really healthy. He was obviously fucking fantastic until he tore his Achilles, but he's just not the same player anymore. And it's going to be great to have that option because I want Zalewski to start on the right more, and I want to see Angelino start on the left because I think even though Zalewski's left-footed and probably a more natural left-sided player, I think he's our best option on the right side because Karsdorp doesn't do it for me. Zeki Celik most certainly doesn't do it for me, and Rasmus Christensen's been awful since he signed for us this summer. So I think it's gonna improve us even more going forward. So I'm really excited to see what we can do in the next couple games.
Yeah, and really just a couple other storylines around the country. Napoli-Lazio played to one of the most boring 0-0s you could ever think of. The game absolutely sucked. It was a Napoli side that they were without Kvaratskhelia, they were without Osimhen. It was a pretty boring game, to be honest. I would say more about the game if there was anything to talk about. Lazio scored a decent goal, was brought back for offsides. Interesting inclusion of Diego Demme into Napoli's midfield. If you were unsure where Zielinski stood in the team, it's certainly obvious now that he has zero place in this team. I mean, Diego Demme kind of sucks, to be honest, and if I think he wasn't actually named after Maradona by his mom, he probably would have never caught a transfer to Napoli to begin with. That was the only thing that stood out for me in this game was the inclusion of him, because when he's starting, I mean, that's kind of how you know Zielinski's races run. I mean, he did play, not really in his position, but I think if Kvaratskhelia was available, he would have been on the bench probably for the whole game. So it's just sad.
I think going into this game, I mean, if you look at the team sheet, Immobile and Zaccagni were suspended for Lazio, Kvara suspended for Napoli. So I think this was a 0-0 that was just screaming out to happen, and that's exactly what we saw. It was a pretty shit game overall.
Yeah, with that, we can move to the last game. A game that was a little more controversial. Fiorentina playing hosts to Inter Fiorentina, who are kind of a darling type of team in the Serie A this year, like Bologna, but it was Lautaro Martinez again. He scored a typical, disgusting, gross, controversial Inter goal, punching a defender in the face and heading the ball in. go watch the replay. That's exactly what he did. I have no idea how the goal stood. There's been a lot of hooting and hollering about Inter's fouls committing this season because if you look everywhere, they've committed almost double the fouls of some of the top 6 teams, and they have half the amount of yellow cards. So
yeah, that stat you sent me was crazy.
That's kind of been a developing storyline. It was a pretty rotated Inter side, but they showed no signs of slowing down. They won again. Obviously, with Juventus dropping points, it was a big result, especially leading into next week's fixture, which is the Derby d'Italia, Inter hosting Juventus at home. So not the best time for Juventus to be losing points, but Inter really was the perfect weekend, even with Milan dropping points too. So
he did kind of stiff arm him and then just ran.
I mean,
away.
it's a foul.
Yeah,
when I saw it in live time before, like right when the goal happened, I was like, "Oh, that's gonna get called back. That's a foul."
Yeah.
And
it's a foul.
I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely shocked. I do want to shout out Jan Sommer in this game, though. I think it was pretty good for him. I mean, he does punch the fucking shit out of Enzo. I pretty much busted his nose. And
I know.
it was a penalty, and then goes and saves the penalty. He had I think 5 or 6 saves altogether in the game, but he's been a perfect replacement for Onana in this team, in my opinion. I think he's slided right in. He's a goalkeeper that I've always rated, even when he was at Mönchengladbach before, and for his performances with the Swiss national team. So I think it's good. As much as I don't really like seeing Inter up there, I do have to stand up for the goalkeepers union and for my boy Jan Sommer.
Yeah. I think we can jump country now to Portugal. If you guys want to highlight the results, there was a pretty massive Sporting result. I'm sure Nate's pretty pleased. I feel like every week now that goes by, I don't want to do any jinxing, knock on some wood, but it seems more and more that Sporting might do the business and win the league. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'll save the best for last. We will start with Porto, who was one of the teams that opened the weekend. Me and Jay have been pretty critical of Porto, and we did mention it before the pod had started recording that Porto have gained a little bit of form, which I mean, soon going into the Champions League games, that's good for Portugal as a coefficient standpoint. Not so much as terms of when we play them in the league. So we'll have to see how that goes. But Evan Nilsson has found some form, scoring a brace. Pepe playing really well. Conceição, the coach's son, which is, I think, something that's embarrassing to say in professional football, but what it is. I don't think he's that good of a player, but he played well this game. Just an overall good performance from them against Feirense, who's not the best team, but still a strong performance. I'll give Jay the floor for Benfica, who continue to have some good form, which is obviously really good to see from a Benfica fan, even though you guys concede first, which tends to be a bit of a trend. So there's still some questions to be asked, but definitely up and up. But I'll let you go from there, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, another pretty textbook performance. I mean, we definitely struggled at the beginning of the game, but they all started playing well again. I mean, we made a sub to Kokshu out. I'm not entirely sure why. I haven't seen anything about if he's hurt or not, but they seemed to shore it up right before the end of the half, so they played well. Arthur Cabral back in the score sheet, scored a bike, which is unbelievable. I couldn't believe a man of that of that build could move like that, but that was nice. But again, off the bench, Marcos Leonardo scores. So that's now, I think, 3-3 in off the bench in the league.
So he's averaging a goal every 20 minutes. Pretty good return.
Yeah,
not too bad.
So that's definitely encouraging. Yeah, for the players that played, I've said it pretty much every podcast, but now I've seen it a lot on the throughout the Twitter, all the Benfica fans and stuff like that. Munato and João Mario have to go. They're so bad in this team. They're so bad. Like, you watch the ball flow freely through everybody else, and then these two, they offer nothing going forward. And it's crazy because they end up with good stats throughout the game. They're just making passes left or right. Nothing crazy, but man, they don't offer anything. And I think now they have Alexander Ba, who's finally back from the dead from being injured for so long. I could definitely see him getting a start pretty soon. With Arsenis taking the left back role instead. And then we also have that new signing from United, Alvaro Fernandez, who looked phenomenal. Played 10 minutes, and he did more than what Alta did in 80. So definitely encouraging, given who we have coming back from injury and all these new signings we've been making. I'm definitely confident that they can do it. We still have Sporting one more time at the end of the year, so we can, if we win out and beat them, then we can surpass them to become champions again. But yeah, they're definitely getting hot at a good time, getting players back at a good time, and making a lot of very good young signings.
Yeah, I agree. I think Benfica are doing really good business this summer. And now they got a couple players who have been injured to come back. I know you've been dying for Murat to get out of the team. So Bach coming back, Auschwitz probably just returns again to the other side of the defense. Even though I think he's more of a midfielder, but I mean, what a fucking player to have though. He is versatile as shit. I think we've seen a couple memes of like an 11 sheet, and it's like Auschwitz in every single position he's played, and the only grayed out positions was like center back and keeper, which is nuts. So a super versatile player. I mean, you love to have that, especially in a team that likes to try to compete in European competitions every season. So I'll give my props to Benfica. Again, like I mentioned at the introduction of this game, I think conceding first has been a trend for you guys. So there's something to be said there. I mean, even the game that we played at Stade de Luz, we went up first, and arguably the better opening to the game. So it's just an interesting trend that I think is probably your biggest concern at the moment. But again, obviously you guys close games really well, and then Marcus Leonardo been able to come off the bench 3 times and score 3 times is super impressive. But yeah, absolutely coming up on form. So it's going to be interesting going into our game at Alvalade.
Yeah.
I will mention before I get into the Sporting game, as I am so excited, I'm almost shaking. Braga did just finish up with another fucking fantastic performance by Salazar, dude. This kid is an absolute baller. I hate to be the guy that just wants to poach from our rivals, but I'd love to come see him at Sporting if we can make room for him, because he's just such a good player. I think he would do so well in either Sporting, Benfica, or Porto, in a team that will compete in the Champions League pretty regularly and even move on to something better. He's just such a good player. Braga did end up tying the game, but just an
tough draw for them. It's against a relegation favorite, but they're pretty much, they were dead last before this game.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something they should expect to win, especially coming off of they just also won the League Cup over the weekend too.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit of a hangover from that, probably literally. But yeah, they're up and down. I don't know. I still don't know what to feel about them.
Yeah, there's something not fully clicking in that team. I know G had highlighted them in the Europa League play, how good they were playing. Something. This little link is broken there.
They are going to be missing Bruma for a long time.
Right.
I think he's out 2 months with a knee injury. So
I think that was a big signing for them. His pace and creativity and like dynamic dribbling was such a key part of that attack. But we'll move to Sporting, who recorded the second largest victory in the last decade in the Portuguese league, an 8-0 thumping of Casa.
Who was number 1?
What? It was number 1.
Who was number 1?
Benfica against Nacional, who suck, by the way. They're like the worst team that's been in the Portuguese league. But anyway, dude, what a game. Another 2 goals from Victor Gyökeres, 2 goals from Trincão, goal and assist from Pedro Gonçalves, 2 goals from our captain, Coates. I mean, like, it was just an all-in-out performance. Actually, surprisingly, someone who didn't play all that well in an 8-0 game, which you would expect everybody did, was Marcus Edwards, who has been sitting on some pine recently. But you can't knock the good form that Trincão and Paulinho, despite me not liking either of them all that much, they've been in. And obviously Victor Gyökeres' spot is not going anywhere anytime soon unless he needs to catch a breath. But dude, just it's exciting, Ange. I have to agree when you said that I must be real happy. I am real happy because obviously going into the latter stages of the season, when Sporting have a good season, it tends to start good and then starts to slow down. And the fact that we're looking at the end of January and they're smashing a team 8-0 is fantastic to see. We're not slowing down, at least as of right now. And I'll hope that form continues. I know I won't see Victor Gyökeres' beautiful face in a green and white kit come the end of the season, probably. But I'm going to enjoy it while I have it because he is something special. And this team is something special. They're playing some great football. Maybe I need a little bit more out wide on the right side. I'm not a guy's biggest fan, but he puts up at least a 6 or a 7, maybe an 8 sometimes. So I can't knock him for not really making mistakes. He just doesn't provide too much for the team.
Can I ask, how this happened? I mean, 8-0 is not your everyday scoreline. Was it just kind of Sporting outclassing their opponent, or defensive mistakes by the opposing team? What was there a culmination of things?
I mean, we were by minute 32. We had 4 or 5.
Right.
It was.
Yeah. I mean,
so we came out on fire. And then I almost think it took the gas out of the tank because Casapia are like a team that last 2 seasons were flirting with upper 6 territory and even trying to break into the top 4. And they've had a rough season this season, so they know that they have a little bit of quality. So they probably were hoping that they could come to Alvalade and be like, all right, let's put up something, even though this is the most informed team in the league right now, especially with Gyökeres up front. And let's try to do something. And then to just go down 4-0 in 25, 30 minutes, that deflates everything. And then from there, it was just there's no heart left. You know what I mean? So it was a little bit of both. Just a phenomenal opening start by Sporting. And then after that, it was just defeat. And damage control was non-existent. They just couldn't get it done.
Gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was an exciting week. Everybody got the result that they wanted to for Braga. But Sporting and Benfica both looking in really good form. So honestly, while obviously I want my team to win, it's shaping up to be just such a fun, exciting, dramatic end of the season that regardless, I think me and Jay should look back and be like, that was dope. You know what I mean? Regardless of which one of us comes out on top, I think
it'd be a dogfight between you two.
It is.
It is.
But it's just gonna be a good season for sure.
Yeah, because I think for me, Sporting you guys probably have had your best squad in probably 5 years, that I would say, and then you also have some good depth and good youth, with real assets in your team for the first time in a long time when it comes with Gyökeres, and now you're bringing in players like Murita and I forgot that other midfielder's name. Hjulmand. Yeah. The 2 of them, then you got your fullback, your center backs rather. The only place you guys are weak are keeper and fullback, but they're definitely putting up a good fight, and I think Ruben Amorim is probably the best manager in the league. Definitely between him and Roger Schmidt, but Roger Schmidt has had more failures than Amorim has yet because he's only been coaching a small amount of time.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's gonna be crazy. But I mean, looking ahead to next year, I would be concerned for Sporting because I feel like you guys may go on a big fire sale and kind of get rid of all of these assets, and you guys might be struggling a bit. And I hope for the sake of the league, you guys are able to do something like Benfica's done this offseason, or the last few really, where we basically have a U23 side ready for next year that they could win the league on their own. Right. Never mind all the other players we have. So hopefully for the league's sake, you guys can do that. But as a city rival, I hope you guys stink. But it'll be exciting the next couple of years.
To counterpoint before we move, I agree because I was of the opinion, I was pretty pissed at upper management in Sporting when we just started selling João Palhinha, Ugarte, Mateus Nunes, and then we just had no midfield to talk about. And I think that was our biggest issue last season because we went from a title-winning side that was based on the fact that we played this really weird midfield, and it worked with Mateus Nunes and João Palhinha, to then offloading them, getting one replacement in Ugarte, and then offloading him again too. And then it was just like a struggle last season, especially. But now we have Hjulmand and Morita who aren't the ones going to be leaving, so at least that's locked in. But the players that we are leaving is center back and probably Victor Gyökeres, obviously, and then maybe even either a Trincão or a Marcus Edwards. But I was pissed before, but I think we've now handled it well because we went and spent that money, maybe a little too late in my opinion, but we brought in Hjulman and Victor Gyökeres, who Hjulman has been a phenomenal midfielder, and obviously Gyökeres is Gyökeres at this point. So we clearly know how to spend the money. It's now making sure we do it a little quicker than we did last time so we don't have that slump season.
Right. You guys are still being reactionary to all this stuff. So instead of kind of being prepared.
Yeah.
But like Benfica's kind of has the next guy ready in every position, which is crazy. But it's very valuable. I mean, that's not something any team should really expect, but it's definitely something everyone should strive for.
Right.
But yeah, no, we're definitely in a really good position right now, and we haven't spent crazy money to do it either.
Yeah. Yeah, Sporting did make 2 late transfer window signings in this kid named Koba and this other younger kid from lower league Portuguese league. So we'll see how they end up showing up maybe later in this season, every now and then sprinkle in a game and then next season. But before we get into AFCON, because AFCON has been unreal, we've been saying it every pod since it started. It's been fantastic. We will just quickly gloss over Germany, where we did see Stuttgart smack around a Leipzig that again dropped the game last week against Leverkusen, so it looks like they just can't hold on to a performance. They smacked them around. Granted, they did go away, but still it's quite embarrassing. Leverkusen did drop the points, so they went from being comfortable after that game last week and pulling the 3 points out of a hat, out of nowhere. Drop points again. Bayern have now closed it as they collected all 6 points over the week. Closed it down to a 2-point gap, which is
so disappointing.
Is really tight. It is disappointing. I'm hoping it's just a little slip up from Leverkusen. They didn't lose, right? It's a tie. That's still a result better than a loss, but we'll see.
It actually kind of reminds me of what Isaac said about City when we were talking about the Premier League. It's like, well, we've never seen this before, and I think all signs lead to Leverkusen shitting their pants when they play Bayern coming up here in a couple of weeks. It's kind of a shaky lead up to that game. I mean, I know they had a nice result against Leipzig last week, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of scary. The only thing I wanted to say is now for Leipzig, I mean, you lost now to 2 direct rivals in this Champions League race. It's 3 losses on the bounce, and it's not like they're not scoring. I mean, they're scoring the goals. They're just conceding in droves. It's a little unfortunate. We'll see. They're obviously still in Europe still, so we'll see. Hopefully the form for them doesn't continue into that competition, but it's not looking good for them.
It's a bad time for Leipzig too, because Dortmund's now gone on a good run of form too. Dortmund's on the bounce. Yeah, and so
I think Stuttgart too. I just wanted to point out this is the first time Stuttgart's won this season without Girassi, and they're in 3rd place, which is absolutely absurd in my opinion.
Oh, Farmers League. That's usually what happens.
Yeah. So I mean, Dennis Undav pops up with a hat trick. Brighton player on loan at Stuttgart right now. So.
Don't remind me. I had his card in Sower. I thought he was going to suck, and I sold him. I'm pissed.
Yeah, anyway. So I mean, good for him. I mean, it's a great performance and a huge win for Stuttgart. But I think that can bring us right to the Dortmund game. We saw Jadon Sancho yet again snubbed at the PK spot. I think it was absolutely fucking hilarious. I don't know if you guys saw this, but they got a penalty and it went to VAR. And as soon as the penalty is awarded, Sancho just goes and stands on the penalty spot and just expects that he's going to be given the ball. And I mean, Niklas Füllkrug is like the certified PK taker in this team. Never missed a penalty in the Bundesliga in his career, and he just
scored 2 of them in that game too.
Had a hat trick, and he just saunters right up, puts the ball down, and just completely disregards Sancho, who just looks absolutely depressed. I mean, he is so desperate to score his first goal, and I just think it's comedy that this guy Füllkrug is like, nah, bro, allow it. I'm taking the penalty, not you.
He gets too much Starboy treatment at United. Now he's come back to reality a little bit.
Yeah. Even Anthony scored before he could.
Unreal. But that brings us to the AFCON, where we have crazy surprises. We'll just go ahead and say that obviously our picks for the AFCON are all out. Last week we had picked Morocco or Senegal to be one of the 2 favorites to win the tournament, and they went out crashing and burning. Morocco losing 2-0 to South America, which I did not see coming. South Africa. What did I say? South America? South Africa.
They're going to have a great team.
South America would go crazy in this tournament.
And then Senegal, we expected that to be more of a tight game, which it was, going to PKs, crashing out to Ivory Coast, who have resurged It's interesting.
I thought Ivory Coast were much the better side in that game. I think they deserved to go through. I thought Senegal, for being the holders of the AFCON, I think there was a pretty poor performance from them, especially considering the quality of that squad. I think it was pretty shocking to go out in penalties to Ivory Coast. I know they're the host, but I think most people would have expected Senegal to move on.
Yeah, and I know it's been difficult. Oh no, go ahead, Ange. Actually, please.
Well, I was going to say, you bring up the fact that Ivory Coast is the host of the tournament, and I think it was the first game in this AFCON tournament that you could really feel the home field advantage of Ivory Coast. There was a lot of belief in this side, a lot of running, and I just want to big up my old friend, the president, Frank Kessie, coming off the bench, scoring 2 penalties. He scored the one in regular time, and he scored the decisive one. That brought a pretty big smile to my face to see him do that for his country. He's been kind of a legend in this modern era of Ivory Coast football. He's the player who's probably achieved the most of the Ivory Coast players. He's been able to lift the Serie A. He really was one of my favorite players for a while. I know I'm wearing a Senegal Koulibaly kit just to represent AFCON a little bit, but yeah, I was pretty happy to see Ivory Coast knock out the defending champions. That kind of made my day.
Yeah, and what I was saying is it's been pretty difficult to get a reliable source to watch some of these games, so we will go day by day since it was 2 games a day in this round. The first day, Angola and Nigeria both shutting out their opponents. Nigeria 2-0 against Cameroon, which Nigeria, again, we had mentioned a lot of people were touting to be a favorite. We kind of weren't sure because they didn't perform all that well in the groups, but clearly shutting us up a little bit as they're solidifying themselves going into the quarterfinals. And Angola, who have been on a dream run, I think, in this tournament, 3-0 against Namibia. Namibia actually ranking higher on the FIFA ratings than Angola, but neither side a huge shout for the title. But Angola is playing great. Gelson Dalla, who has played in the Portuguese league, actually is a Sporting product from the academy, on all 3 goals there. What a performance!
Did you happen to catch the 3rd goal that Angola scored? Did you see that technique that dude used to throw that ball?
Nice.
That was
unbelievable.
I
can do that.
That was the last thing I was expecting him to do.
I've tried that before in the backyard.
But the other thing I wanted to say about the other game from this day was if you're Andre Onana, I mean, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, they make this big stink about getting him down there in time for the first game. He misses the first game. He plays the second game, and then he's dropped, and he doesn't play in the final game or in the knockout round. And I like, what the fuck? I mean, why even make a big deal about coming out of retirement and leaving United? Why not just stay at United? Why not just stay there, leave the team be, not cause all these issues? Because I mean, and even when he played, like I said, like, what are you doing giving advice on a fucking attacking free kick? Like, I have so many questions, and that's something I really wanted to point out because I think it's pretty detrimental to Cameroon's squad morale when you have this kind of chopping and changing at the back.
To be fair to Onana, I bet every United player would love for there to be an international tournament going on where they could get a break from playing for Manchester United. But yeah, I actually kind of wanted to touch on that too. It was a disappointing performance for Cameroon, and I mean, they failed to beat any of the big teams. I mean, they played to a 1-1 draw against Guinea. They were outclassed against Senegal, and then they were outclassed again by Nigeria. So I wasn't too surprised to see them go out. Nigeria does look to be gathering steam, and I think now they probably are the favorite going into the quarterfinals. So we'll see how they play up to that. But
yeah, and then Sunday saw Guinea beat Equatorial Guinea 1-0, and Egypt crash out without Mo Salah.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
it's a bummer he has to play for a comeback to Liverpool, man.
Yeah, that sucks.
How disappointing.
Yeah.
The crazy thing about the Egypt game, did you guys notice the goalkeeper shot well before some of the outfield players? Like, the goalkeeper shot 6 and 7, or 7 and 8 or something. It was weird.
Yeah, it was Congo's goalkeeper that scored the decisive penalty. DR Congo might be a little bit of a dark horse. I don't know how much you guys have looked at their team. They were actually a team. I know I haven't really brought them up on the podcast, but I remember looking at their squad going into this tournament, thinking that it's a lot better than you might think. I encourage all of you to go check out their starting 11. There's some pretty decent European talent.
He's very good
in this team. Yeah, there's a couple names that you really wouldn't expect to be in this side. I think they were probably licking their lips to see an Egypt side without Mo Salah. I'm sure they fancied themselves. The other thing I wanted to say about Sunday's fixtures was our good friend Nsu spooned his penalty off the post in regular time against Guinea. It was a Guinea derby by all accounts, but that was heartbreaking. The coach was on the sideline, mortified. There was that meme going around. He was absolutely dropped to the floor. I'm sure he thought that his number 9, who was in blistering form, would have slotted it home. It probably would have propelled them to victory. They ended up losing the game in the 98th minute, heartbreaking fashion. So their Cinderella run is over. So that was a little unfortunate to see. Yeah. But I think Guinea and DR Congo is going to be an interesting fixture. I mean, whoever wins that game I think they're going to have a good chance of reaching the final, personally. But we'll see how things play out.
I think it's a fun tournament because it's like all of the favorites, and like I'm looking at the teams and it's like I don't know the players, but it's kind of sick that I don't know the players. You know what I mean? It's the teams that aren't supposed to be winning that are winning.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
It's bring that up. Nice. To bring that up too, like we had been talking about this earlier in our group chat, but the quarterfinal teams are completely different from 2 years ago. Every single one of them is not the same. So I think that just goes to show you how entertaining and unpredictable the AFCON can be.
Right. If we compare it to like the Euros this summer, I bet like the Euros we kind of know who we don't know, but like it won't be a surprise.
There's no shot that the last quarterfinalists. All of them don't miss it. Yeah. I don't think
you're right. 100%.
There's a 0 chance of that.
Right, absolutely. And then Monday came Cape Verde, another team. I'm just hype about our Portuguese-speaking countries. I know some of these guys. They come up through the Portuguese league ranks. Cape Verde on also a dream run. They are coasting. Cabral, actually, his performance, we were talking about how this AFCON should get more credit and more viewership so that players can make moves. Giovanni Cabral actually just got a move to Galatasaray from Sporting. He was on loan at Salernitana, but because of his performances for Cape Verde in this AFCON so far, so I guess that's a testament to what we were saying. Cape Verde have been playing out of their shoes, out of their socks. And that same day was also the day we saw Ivory Coast knock out Senegal, as we mentioned, in PKs. I know we already kind of broke down that team. Kessie with some clinical penalty kick taking from his Milan days.
The only thing I wanted to say is this Cape Verde team's sneaky too. Now, I am kind of an MLS fan, so I was familiar with the fullback Moreira and Jameson Montero. They're coming off the back of really solid MLS seasons. Moreira actually won MLS Cup with Columbus Crew, so it's nice to see him continue his form. And I know Nate and I last year were pretty big Toulouse fans. We were kind of fans of their little Cinderella story. They were able to lift the trophy. This Cape Verde team feels Logan Costa in their back line. I know he's a young center back. I can't say I've gotten to watch too much of him play, but the couple times I have, I've been pretty impressed. So it is cool to see, these teams with not too much talent, but some recognizable names like really make a run. And I mean, to be hosting South Africa in the next round, I mean, Cape Verde have a really good shot at reaching a semifinal, I think for the first time in their history.
Yeah, and they play like a team, I think. It's a lot of times you see these AFCON teams with like a little bit of talent here and there mixed in. Those players probably get direction from the coach to try to carry the team on their own, but it's nice to see that some of these squads, Cape Verde in particular, are really playing like a unit, which changes the game completely because that cohesion is something you don't normally find in this tournament always, but I think they're playing fantastic. And then yesterday, as of time of recording, so Tuesday, we saw Mali, Ange's dark horse. He must have been very satisfied with that win, 2-1 over Burkina Faso. And then Morocco, who was my pick, and it was yours too, right, G, to win the tournament, just crashed out. I just don't know what happened. They were just
They let us down, Nate.
Amrabat, who usually locks in that midfield, was sent off on after 2 yellows. Mazraoui just didn't show up. Hakimi missed a penalty.
That penalty, man.
And Asiri just doesn't get on the score sheet. When your key players, unfortunately, just don't play, that's it for you. You know what I mean? And Onahi had a good game, who I've been highlighting as a really good youth talent. But credit to South Africa, who had a great game. And pulled a little Ronaldo celebration, which even though I wanted Morocco,
wasn't that epic?
I wanted Morocco to move on, but it was nice after Morocco knocked us out of the World Cup to see Ronaldo's influence on the pitch after they got knocked out. So that was something
for the real thing.
Yeah, and I think something awesome too, just like the emotion of the fans in these games has just been awesome. Just to see like the devastation when their team loses and the absolute elation when their team wins. It's great and adds so much to the atmosphere and just the vibe of watching the games, in my opinion.
The Morocco fans were devastated. Yeah, they were. I mean, I've seen like 10 to 15 pictures of them.
Yeah, so many memes, dude.
I mean, but what a roller coaster these Morocco fans have been on. I mean, they were a half of football away from a World Cup final, and now, I mean, I'm sure they would have thought that they were going to at least reach the final of the AFCON, and to be crashing out. Who knows what the future has in store for Morocco. But you
could say that for Ivory Coast as well. I mean, if you look at them, most people thought they were going out after their third game as the hosts, and now they're through, and they made a complete 180. They sacked their manager. And they're still in AFCON.
Unreal.
They wanted to take their old manager in on loan, which I've never even heard that.
I've never heard of that.
That's just AFCON in a nutshell for you.
Unreal.
Yeah, I love these little things.
And Hervé Renard's actually a great coach. I think he's won the AFCON twice. I think he won it with Zambia, and
I think he's one of the only managers.
He won it with Ivory Coast as well too in the past. But yeah, Ivory Coast are obviously going to play Mali, who also played on Tuesday. They are my dark horse. Ivory Coast was kind of one of my dark horses too, so at least I can say one of my dark horses will reach the semifinal.
You named every team left as a dark horse.
No, I have not.
The dark horse. Cape Verde's a dark horse. Mali's a dark horse. Is Guinea a dark horse?
They are, but Mali's mine. That's the difference.
All right, you lock in.
But yeah, they had a real captain's contribution from Traore. He is probably the most experienced player in this team, so it was cool to see him contribute again. And yeah, we'll see. I'm pretty excited for Mali Ivory Coast.
Yeah, AFCON in general has been fantastic so far. Nothing bad to say about it. It's lived up to the hype and more, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I will go over. We have hint and mention in conversation. What are the quarterfinal matchups? We'll solidify them now. First ones are on Friday, February 2nd. It's Nigeria take Angola. And then the Congo take on Guinea on the other side of the bracket. On the same side as the Nigeria bracket is Cape Verde take on South Africa, and then Mali and Ivory Coast, as we were just mentioning. So that is shaping up to be such a fantastic tournament. We did say that it was going to be like that. The knockouts were going to be fucking awesome, and they already have started to be, and there's only more to come. So we are excited for that February 11th final. So that's going to be exciting. Ange, I know you said Nigeria. Anyone else has a crack to be favorite for this tournament after that first round of knockouts? Or is Nigeria solid?
Favorites have to be, real favorites have to be Nigeria and Ivory Coast. But yeah, anybody's got a shot.
Yeah, I have a really good feeling that if Ivory Coast can get past Mali, that they'll lift it.
Agreed.
Just being at home, but yeah, those are the two favorites. If you ask me who I want to win, it would be one of Mali or Ivory Coast. But Nigeria are cool too. They're a cool story. They're probably one of them. They're probably it's about time that they lifted a bit of silverware. So
it'd be good for Osimhen as well to win AFCON.
Yeah, I'm happy honestly with whoever wins at this point now.
Yeah. Completely satisfied with the tournament so far. I honestly, no matter who wins, I'll be more than happy with just being able to experience it.
Yeah. But I would love to see either Cape Verde or Angola finish at least third. Hopefully, I love it.
Right.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that said, I think we can wrap up the AFCON talk and move to our five-a-side segment quickly. I don't know. We'll fill Isaac in. I don't know how many times you've seen us do this, but we try to pick a five-a-side for every episode. Usually a goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, forward, and then a flex player. So usually Gianluca walks us through the goalkeeper performances of the weekend. Is there anyone that sticks out for you this week, John?
Yeah, for me, I think I got to go with Jan Sommer. I know I bigged him up in our Serie A segment, but I think to get the clean sheet, save the penalty after you give it up, and keep Inter top of the table, actually put them top of the table. That since Juventus dropped points, I think it's only going to be him, really.
Yeah, I was going to be mad if you didn't say that. I was actually going to shout him out too, to be honest.
Fair. And we can move to defense. Usually we have Patrick pick the defender, but I think it's picking itself. And it was a player today. He donned a Liverpool shirt just like Isaac is.
We'll let Isaac say it.
Yeah,
it's Connor Bradley. I mean, you come in for a world-class right back, and you put on a world-class performance as a backup, a goal and 2 assists, and you never give a pass to you.
Yeah, it's crazy, and for Liverpool to like really not even miss the performances of Trent at all just says everything. He was probably the best player I watched this weekend. If I'm going to be 100% honest, was young Connor Bradley, so he's definitely in it. Defense. Does anyone have any midfielder picks that jump off the table? Because I think the forwards are probably going to end up picking themselves, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, can't say anybody's really sticking out to me right now. Maybe Pedro Gonçalves with in the 8-0 thrashing, but then again, you could pick anybody from that team.
Yeah, I think it's dependent because midfielders, nobody's jumping off the page at me like you were saying, and I think it'd be criminal for Sporting's 8-0, especially me being a fan myself, to go unnoticed without a player in this team. If we can't pick a player, I think Pedro Gonçalves had a great game. I mean, I guess there's Rodri who scored in the game or had an assist.
I was gonna say Rodri played well, but
yeah. I have no other shout. I just think it was a top and bottom heavy, nothing down in the middle in a lot of these.
I'm gonna make a shout.
Please.
I know we didn't really talk much about La Liga this weekend, but I thought Eduardo Camavinga was thoroughly impressive for Real Madrid. I think he slotted into the midfield perfectly. He was dynamic as fuck. He had a brilliant assist to set up Vinny's goal. So I think if we're gonna throw somebody out there, I think Camavinga deserves one at least.
Maybe Ross Barkley too. Very important part of that.
Yeah, he was great again.
I'm fine with it being Pedro Gonçalves, actually an 8-0 win, first place team. They keep the pressure on Benfica.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And if we want to move to forward, this is where I do have a Luton representative. I think it has to be Elijah Adebayo, a hat-trick for Luton at home.
Absolutely.
Against Brighton. Brilliant performance. He's my forward pick. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree. I'd shout probably like Gyökeres or Julian Alvarez as well for a flex. But yeah, I think that has to be the forward
as well.
Yeah, I think it's what it means for Luton and what it means for their season. And I think Adebayo has been one of their key players and one of their key signings for this Prem run that they're trying to make. I think him bagging a hat trick against Brighton, who are one of the toughest teams to play in the league, I think that deserves the starting spot without a doubt.
I have an outside shout. Alexander Sorloth for Villarreal. He had 2 assists and a goal against Barcelona, and they're 5-3.
He was great.
And he played really well
in that game.
But I don't know if it's worthy. I don't know if it's the same as Adebayo, but he's just another one to think about.
Yeah, it's a good shout for flex, and we'll move into flex. So we have Sorloth, we have Gyökeres. There's a couple Crystal Palace boys that I thought had a couple cold performances. Olise and Eze were, just doing bits. They showed how levels above they are really of their teammates in this Palace side. As they scored 2 quality goals. Olise scored a snipe to win the game. Yeah, Olise might be my pick at flex, to be honest. A goal and 2 assists. He's almost becoming a regular, I feel like, in our 5-a-side. This isn't the first time he's made it.
Right. I want to show. We mentioned him quickly. We flew through the Bundesliga, but Dennis Undav had a hat trick.
Yeah.
And during that smacking of Leipzig, who are no joke of a team. So that was a pretty big achievement for him as well.
I'm gonna throw a name out there.
Please.
Ademola Lookman, 2 goals against Cameroon for Nigeria to see them through. I think his performance is great because Osimhen has not really been firing on all cylinders for Nigeria so far in this tournament, and to have Lookman show up and score both goals and really be the more threatening option, I think, in attack. I know Osimhen's pace definitely causes a lot of problems, but Lookman seems to be the one popping up when Osimhen draws the attention. So I think he deserves a shout at least.
And you know what? Actually, I think we should go AFCON, but I'll have another shout to challenge that, and we can go on a vote. Because I think AFCON deserves a name in this five side. Gelson Dalla, I mentioned 2 goals and an assist. So Gelson Dalla or Lookman, I think, get the flex for me, and I think we should go on a vote. I lean Gelson Dalla, but if you guys have,
Angola, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm good with that one.
What are the options?
Gelson Dalla and Lookman, who Lookman had
Adam
2 goals.
Lookman, yeah.
Yeah.
Lookman 2 goals for Nigeria, yep.
And Gelson Dalla with 2 goals and an assist for Angola. I like Dalla. That's a Sporting Academy player.
Yeah, I think as much as I know I shouted Lookman, but I do like the Gelson Dalla pick. I didn't catch the game, but I saw the highlights. He looked really good in the game. I think he was definitely their most threatening player. So I like that pick.
Yeah, that's a good pick. 2 goals and an assist is better than 2 goals, right?
That sucks. I picked Lookman, but that's fine.
This is a democracy. That was fantastic. Very happy to have Isaac here. Liverpool do play Arsenal, so if he's free next week, he might still be here again. You might see his face again, maybe with a smile, maybe with a frown that time. It might be when we hit him up to come join. It might be what the result of that game is, if he comes or not, but we'll have to see. The AFCON will have progressed a little bit further. Can't wait to talk about that again. And of course, everybody just have a great week. Keep watching footy. Keep watching all our videos. Keep keeping up with everything we're talking about. Keeping up with the football world. And also, keep on being a son of a bitch.